Okay, all right. I think I've given folks enough time to join, and now that I'm recording these things, I guess someone could go back and listen to the recording if they've missed something and want to see it again. So, greetings from Daytona Beach, where the sun is finally starting to shine, but it's been not the best weather down here. Uh, um, let's just jump and get into it here. So, the very short answer in terms of what we're seeing so far in February is that things are off slightly from January and slightly when you look at it on a year-over-year basis. So January was up by a point and a bit, and February is down by a point and a bit. Um, Personally, I would say with as much uncertainty as we're seeing in the world today, to see such a sort of slight decrease in volume is probably a pretty, showing some resiliency there, because we're certainly seeing enough stuff that it's, uh, you know, concerning from a CEO confidence perspective. We just don't know what the impact of some of these things that are happening in the world are going to be, and that's always historically had a negative impact on the U.S. charter market due to the emotional nature of the purchase. So I think all things considered, nobody likes to see year-over-year declines, but all things considered, I think it could be worse. And you'll see as we roll through the deck here that it's not universally off. There are some markets that are doing quite well right now, and some aircraft types and whatnot that are doing quite well too. So let's roll forward here. When we look at the year-to-date graph, mid-month, these aren't as useful because we're just seeing sort of half a bar. But this is, I believe it's 49% and change, or give or take, of where we would have been halfway. It's nearly half of what last month would have been on a when we compare first half to first half. So it's tracking pretty closely. Um, and then here is Part 91 trend. As we've seen historically, Part 91 and 91K combined have been doing much better than the charter market overall, and this month is no exception to that. So we're tracking up 4.4% for the year to date and 2% for the month to date. And then here is the Part 91 traffic trend overall. While it is up more than the charter market is, it is not up as, it's not doing as well as it was in January either. So there is just a macro level trend that says that February's traffic is off a bit from where we were in January. And when we look at it on a combined basis, obviously, if both of the two driving factors, Part 91 and charter, are off a bit, we're going to see the same thing here. This looks a little more dramatic, I think. Just this downward slope. It's only the first time we have a slope, and it's really give or take a percentage point overall. So it's not really a huge decrease. Now, when we start looking at the size classes here, this is the pattern we've seen so far all year, with the light jets being off, give or take 5 to 6% compared to last year. Some of that earlier we could attribute to the holiday travel or getting out of that holiday period, and we are seeing more activity here. I mean, this was the Valentine's Day / President's Day weekend spike, but it's still below the year-to-date number. When we go take a look at mid-sized jets, it's a different story. For this year, mid-sized jets have been up, fairly significantly, up 8.3% year to date and 7.4% month to date. That's pretty good numbers. Of course, when we look at it over the various size classes, nothing is more popular than a super mid right now. I was talking to somebody recently that the Challenger 350, 300, 3500 are exceptionally popular aircraft right now, and we're seeing that reflected in these numbers. Up 10% for the year to date, which is pretty phenomenal, and 8.3% for the month to date. So large cabin also doing fairly well, up 5.2% for the month and sorry, for the year to date and 1% for the month. And yet, when we get to turboprops, that's a different story, and we're showing sort of double-digit declines. They just haven't been as popular. So rolling into our major metro markets, we have Los Angeles. With this chart, we are tracking the airline traffic as well. We do that for a number of the different cities here. And from there, I'm recording a call if you're.
All right.
From here, we flip over to GA, and on the GA side of things, volume is up 6.6% for the month. Sorry, year to date, and 5% for the month. Here is Van Nuys, not quite the same story, right? And this has been off all year, particularly for the year to date because of the fires out there. And, I have to think that's also impacting this airport on a month to date basis. And then here is LaGuardia, an East Coast airport that we track on the airline basis. So this is one of our airline barometer airports. The very deep lows here are Saturdays, where domestic airline flights are much lower than during the week flights. You can see it's up 1.1% for the year to date. And then when we flip over to look at our favorite business aviation airport for the New York market, Teterboro had quite a nice spike here over the President's Day / Valentine's Day holiday period, up 7.9% for the month to date so far, and 2.3% for the year. White Plains was also strong, up 3.4% so far this month. Farmingdale, on the other hand, that has been up in many of the other months, was not up for the first half of this month, is actually off by 6.1%. That's interesting, especially when you look at all these other metro area airports that were, showing positive trends. So we're 6.5% above for the month of February so far for Morristown. Then here is Chicago Midway for all traffic. That's including the airline stuff. And you can see that that's off a bit, 5.3% for the year, 9.7% for the month. And also off a bit when we pull out the airlines and just go to GA. So softer market there in Chicago. Doing better in the suburbs when we look at Pewaukee, only off 2.2% and up 9.9% for the month. And then here is Atlanta. This is including the airlines. So like I said, some of these airports, we like to look at the airline traffic too, which is up less than 1%. Different story here. We had a spike that was around the college game. But now when we look at things, rolling forward into February, traffic's off 6.1%. And that drop is carrying over to Peachtree as well. So then when we roll up to Boston, you can see that the volume when we look at the airlines is up 5.8%. When we pull out the airline traffic, it's actually better on a percentage basis. Obviously, fewer total flights, but on a percentage basis, 5.9% for the month and 8.5% for the year. And then here is Bedford Suburban Airport, also up, a healthy amount year over year. So 6.4% for the month and 2.3% for the year. So obviously, when you see all this, while the market itself is off slightly, there are airports that are doing, far better. It's not like it's off across the board. Here's Reagan National, and for this airport, it's another airline barometer airport. This big drop is attributable to the crash that was there, so things got shut down for a while, and that, but things have obviously rebounded at this point to that airport. Dulles is really where we start to see GA traffic, but here it is with all types, including the airlines. And then here it is when we pull out the airlines. So we had a spike around the inauguration here, and the traffic continues to be strong into DC, up 10.10% for the month. And then here is Manassas, also saw a spike around the inauguration, but not doing quite so well in February, off 22%. So it's interesting how those things trend up and down depending on the city. Then here is Charlotte. And for Charlotte here, we're looking again, all traffic, including the airlines. And you can see that's up just about 2.6%. And then we get to the GA side of things, doing much better than the airline portion. So we're up 8.8% for the month there and 10.3% for the year. So Charlotte's having a good year so far. Going into our second home city stuff, we can pretty much skip this one because we're out of season for the Hamptons. When we get to Aspen with the airlines, we can see that we're off slightly for the month, 1.9%. And when we pull out the GA, we're off a little more, off 9.4. Then here is Eagle or Vail, with the airlines up 10.7% and 3.1% for the month. But here as well, we're off 2.4% on a month-to-date basis. So the ski country there has not been as popular as we were seeing earlier this year. Here is Denver Centennial, off only 0.2% and holding at slight positive trend of 0.3%. Here's Nantucket. We'll also skip that one because it's deeply off season. Martha's Vineyard, same deal. And then here is Napa, where we're off 1% for the month and 0.3% for the year. So a bunch of those leisure destinations not quite where we normally see them, and that includes Bandon Dunes, which is off 6.1% for the month. So we can see where people aren't going. And it does look like certain business centers are doing better than some of these leisure destinations. Apologize for the background noise. Like I said, I'm in a on the road today. Here is Scottsdale, which is almost universally up traffic wise. And for the first time in quite a while, we can see that Scottsdale is actually off 2.5% for the month. Jackson Hole, on the other hand, is a popular leisure destination, and it is up 8.2% and 14.6% for the year. So the up and down, it's not limited to, or it's not all of the ski destinations are being negatively impacted, we could say there. And then here is Hilton Head, which is being negatively impacted to the tune of 9.9%, which has taken the airport for the whole year to date down into negative territory. Now, looking at other cities, here is Addison in Texas, having a very strong month, up 12.5% against 1.2% for the year. So actually doing much better in February than it was in January. Here's Dallas Love. With all traffic, it's off slightly for the year and up 0.2. That's including the airlines. When we pull the airlines out, it's much stronger, being up 4.3% for the year to date and 3.5% for the month to date. Here's Opelika getting down into Florida, also a strong month, stronger than the year to date, so up 17.3%. People are definitely heading for the warm weather. It's been so cold up north. I'm sure that's driving some of it. And 6.6% for the year to date. Then here's Fort Lauderdale International, including the airline stuff, off slightly at 1.6% for the year to date and 3.2% for the month. Then here it is just for GA, where we had quite a nice spike there, and we're tracking up 28.2%. So some crazy high traffic in there. Here's Fort Lauderdale Exec, also really strong, 18.1% up month to date, which is beating the 6% year to date trend. Naples, flipping over to the Gulf Coast of Florida, is up 9.3% for the month and 9.4% for the year. So pretty consistently up there. And then here is West Palm Beach, all traffic off 1%. And then here it is for the GA. Is there anybody that cares to hazard a guess as to what's going on with these dips and why we're seeing this month to date that's off 23.3%?
It's all the TFRs from Trump.
That's right. Yep. So that's it. So if the FBOs in West Palm, kind of get a gut punch there, because it does have a pretty significant impact on the GA traffic and the limitations. If you read those TFRs and what you have to go through to go in and out of there, it's not easy. So there's that. And that's the last airport that we report on. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting that I've added Nassau to after West Palm. So we have one more, and that's Nassau, and you can see here that we're off 4.3% month to date and 2.5% year to date. So slightly weaker out there, but still had a strong President's Day slash Valentine's Day. So if we bounce here to the most recent week, here we go. We got a lower concentration of airports in the top 50. So we were at 801 for the last 2 weeks of January, and we have 694 flights that managed to find their way into the top 50 here. That just means people are flying to a broader range of airports, but that doesn't mean that the patterns aren't where we expect them. So, it is very typical to see Teterboro to Opelika and Teterboro to West Palm being the top categories. This Transcon Van Nuys to Teterboro, that's common to see it up there. And there's our Van Nuys to Las Vegas, which is save for this time of year, actually the most popular route in the US. So everything looks pretty typical. If anything, I would say there's a little more traffic to the Bahamas and the Caribbean than sometimes we see and have seen in prior years. So take that for what it's worth. Now, if we bounce down, here is the most recent week on fuel. So you can see that it flipped. Like here was the last reporting period. Everything went up, not a lot, but slightly, or I should say most airports. Here it's kind of opposite. Prices went up in South Dakota and Vermont and in Hawaii, but that's about it. But there weren't any really dramatic changes. I mean, biggest one being Colorado, prices went down. And then here's just the average or the overall prices across the US. And you can see that Colorado is still super expensive, as is Alaska and Rhode Island. Nothing really new there. Those patterns are just all holding in there. So at this point, if anybody has a slide that you would like me to go back to and see again, if you have, and sure, Paul, you know what? I got to send that to you after, just because I'm traveling. I can't actually pull that slide dynamically, but I'm happy to follow up with you and get you the Nassau GA only. And I can actually add that to the deck. I'll just turn that into a GA only slide because I think that's what we care about there. But unfortunately, I can't pull that in real time on this call. If anybody has any other slides on the deck that I went by too fast, or questions on this or anything that's going on in the industry, you've got a good group of folks here that can chime in.
Hey, Greg, do you think the numbers in Scottsdale are from the accident that was out there?
I'd bet that it wasn't closed long enough. From what I understand from folks that are out there, the airport wasn't shut down for that long. I don't think it's enough to knock it down 2.5% personally. It's like, because that would have been one part of one afternoon, right? It wasn't closed for multiple days. So I don't think, I mean, it might have had some impact. I don't think that's a total impact though.
Okay.
Yep. Anybody else? Okay, well, we're closing in on schedulers and dispatchers, right? It's a little more than a month, and we'll all be together in New Orleans. There are a lot of people that will be here. We certainly will be here. Be there in New Orleans, and look forward to seeing everybody that joins these calls in person out there. Also, I will be in a couple weeks. I'm going to be in Scottsdale and then out on the West Coast in a little bit of Las Vegas and a little bit of Southern California. So looking forward to seeing some folks out there. When it's 7 degrees in New Hampshire, it's a good time to go out and travel and visit people. So that's what we're doing. Next call will be the 6th of March. And on that call, we will go over the full month of February. So we'll see how that all shakes out. I think it's going to be close to break even. I don't see anything out there that would tell me that things are going to drop. you know, from where they are. I think we're going to see this modest dip. We might even gain a little bit of territory between, you know, the 15th and the end of the month, but we'll have that data in a couple of weeks. So with that, thanks everybody for joining, and we will talk to you again in 2 weeks.